Hello, everybody. It's Kxo Radio AM 1230. And once again, we're here with Mickey Dale for a high school football recap and preview. So, Mickey, how you doing? What you got for us?
Doing great. You know, it was down to just two more teams left. We had three games last week. One of them went down in defeat, but the other two came up with victories as Calipatria will head now to the Division 5 AA championship game, and the Central Spartans will head to the Division 3 semifinals this week. The chance for an undefeated season ended for the Holtville Vikings in a narrow loss to last year's Division 1 champions. More about that in just a minute. But if we look our attention up toward the north, the Calipatria Hornets head to the championship game of the Division 5 AA division as they picked up a 20-8 victory over Maranatha Christian at Veterans Field last Friday. The 8-2 Hornets never trailed in the game, and they led 20-0 on a pair of touchdowns by Dominic Hawk and one by Jordan Potter. Those two scores by Hawk, by the way, gives him 28 rushing touchdowns on the season. Head coach Tony Leon's defense was led by Oscar Lopez, who had an interception and a fumble recovery that helped set up some of those scores. The Eagles' lone points came in the final quarter when Jake Locker hit Hudson Heinrichs for a touchdown pass, but it was too little too late for the Eagles, who had finished their season with a record of 8-4. Now the top-seeded Hornets will meet third-seeded Coastal Academy in the divisional championship game in the new stadium at Palomar College in San Marcos Thursday at 7 p.m. The Stingrays won their 10th game of the season with a narrow 8-7 upset win over second-seeded Tri-City Christian in the other semifinal game of the division last week. Coastal Academy, you may remember, played in El Centro earlier this year in Week 3 against the Southwest Eagles and came back with a 20-8 victory back in September. They're 10-2 on the season, so that sets up to be a really good Division 5 AA championship game on Thursday night between Calipatria and Coastal Academy. Meanwhile, the top-seeded Central Spartans defeated Patrick Henry 20-12 last week to move to the semifinals of Division 3 in CIF. Quarterback Luis Jimenez fired scoring passes to Joshua Garcia and Emiliano Morales to lead the Spartans, and Nico Viesca opened the scoring with a 3-yard run in the first quarter. He now has 16 rushing touchdowns on the season. Central led 20-6 heading into the final quarter, and the 7-5 Patriots scored with a minute and a half to go to cut Central's lead to one possession, but they were unsuccessful on their onside kick. So the 8-3 Spartans under head coach David Pena will now host fourth-seeded San Pasqual at Cal Jones Field Friday at 7 p.m. The Golden Eagles from Escondido easily defeated Eastlake 34-13 last week, and they have a 6-5 overall record. Carol Buckley and John Driffel will be at Mike's side for that one. It'll be on KXO Radio 12:30 a.m. as well as the KXO YouTube channel and on KXORadio.com. Their pregame should be starting up around 6:30 on Friday night. And, Kurt, as you know, Peggy and I went over to Holtville last week to watch the Vikings take on St. Augustine, and a little chillier night than what we were anticipating as the wind was blowing out of the west for the whole game, and it was very cold. But we enjoyed it. It was real football weather, and unfortunately the Vikings came up a little bit short on that. The Saints were seeded number 7. Holtville was seeded number 2 in the game, and it would end up with St. Augustine picking up a 10-6 victory. The Saints got on the board just before the half, seconds before the half, when Pai Palomalu took a direct snap and scored from a yard out. You may remember the last name of Palomalu. His father, Troy, was an all-pro player for the Pittsburgh Steelers, now in the Hall of Fame, and I believe he's the defensive coordinator for this team. And his son, Pi, scored the touchdown, and he also had his 5th interception of the season while playing on defense. He's just a sophomore, so he'll be one to watch. Good ball player. Freshman kicker Callan Moore hit the extra point on that, and it was 7-0 Saints at the half. They would go on to get the second half kickoff and march down the field, but the Vikings defense bent but didn't break, and Moore would be called back in to kick a field goal of 26 yards to give the Saints a 10-0 lead. But the Vikings, they didn't give up. They got on the board when Enrique Armas scored from 2 yards out with less than 6 minutes remaining in the game. And unfortunately, the conversion failed. St. Augustine was up 10-6. The Vikings defense again stepped up and got the ball back after the Saints went 3 and out and had to punt. The Vikings started at their own 20-yard line, moved up to the 47 on a 19-yard pass from Alonzo Cuevas to Braden Terrell. However, an interception by Matt Weinfeld into the Vikings' dream at the Saints' 36-yard line with just over 2 minutes remaining. A terrific season, though, for Holville, as Jason Turner's club goes 10-0 before that loss and had a 17-game win streak leading back to last year when they won the Division V AA championship. And so just a great season for that Holville Viking team. Meanwhile, St. Augustine was the Division I champion last year. They were moved down 2 divisions as they went with an 0-10 record going into the playoffs. So that's how they ended up down in Division III with the new CIF format. They'll now meet third-seeded San Diego High Friday, with the winner heading to the Division III semifinal. That game will be played at San Diego High School. It's where the San Diego Chargers once called home at Balboa Stadium. And Kurt, a few years ago, my son Jonathan and I, we were calling games for Imperial back in 2010, I believe. And we called a game from there. And having watched the Chargers play at Balboa Stadium when I was just a young lad with my dad, it was kind of cool to be able to call a game from the same place that the Chargers played at. It's the same concrete seating on the side. It just doesn't have the bowl on the north like it used to have the peristyles on the south side. But just a real neat place to watch a football game. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And Carol and John will keep everybody updated on how the games go on Friday night as the Spartans take on San Pasquale of Escondido, and that ought to be a good game as well.
All right, everybody. Thank you, Mickey. Great update, and we're going to have a fun weekend.
Yep, we are. It's going to be a good one to watch. Peg and I may go over and watch the Central game. If not, we'll be tuned into KXO and listening to it, and we'll try recapping it for you next week and give you a flavor of how that game went.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you after this weekend's games. Thanks.